Thank you, Rob, and welcome everybody to our open table, where membership in the coalition means you're being committed to ending homelessness and to engaging others with respect. We acknowledge that we gather on the homelands of the Puyallup tribe of Indians who have stewarded this coastal space for thousands of years. We honor their stewardship and challenge ourselves and our communities to listen to and act on their wisdom in protecting this earth we share. Today is June 13th, historically not a very remarkable day, though some may try to ride the wave of National Blame Someone Else Day, which is celebrated the first Friday the 13th of the year. But tomorrow, June 14th, has historical significance as Flag Day, commemorating the adoption of the flag of the United States on June 14th, 1777 by the Second Continental Congress. The colors and patterns on that piece of cloth have emboldened, inspired, and enraged, and disagreements about its meaning have cost many lives. Also tomorrow, an unprecedented military parade at the Washington, D.C. Capitol Mall celebrates the U.S. Army's 250th birthday, as well as the President's 79th birthday. Costs for this spectacle vary widely, with estimates between 25 and 45 million taxpayer dollars. A different sort of gathering will take place in all U.S. states tomorrow, with nearly 2,000 peaceful protests planned throughout the day and a prediction of participants in the millions. Organized by the 50-51 movement and under the banner of No Kings, a nationwide day of defiance, these events invite citizens throughout the country to come together to oppose the centralizing of power by the current administration, with messages spelling out exactly what rights a democracy demands be respected by all branches of government, and denouncing the many acts of administrative overreach since January 20th. More than 100 of these events have been organized since the president called in thousands of National Guard troops and Marines to Los Angeles without request from local or state officials, in a move interpreted by both the mayor and the governor as a provocation and a test case on dealing with other local resistance to immigration raids being conducted by ICE. As the LA mayor claimed, local law enforcement is well equipped to manage a few hundred protesters in a city of over 3 million. This current news summary may seem ill-suited to a welcome message that aims to center us on our work to end homelessness, but the connection feels clear to me. Not only am I increasingly disturbed by the level of federal disregard for constitutionally protected due process regarding immigrants in the U.S., but we already see such disregard spilling over into discriminatory treatment of other vulnerable groups and those who stand up for them, especially those who are poor, houseless, LGBTQ, or BIPOC, or those with disabling conditions. So what I hear in my soul is the steady drumbeat of a call to action. Locally and at all levels, to respect rights for all. I looked for a suitable poetic voice, which is my practice, that defends democracy and human rights, and I found a short challenge from feminist poet Adrienne Rich, who wrote, "Poetry can't give us the laws and institutions and representatives, the antidotes we need. Only public activism by massive numbers of citizens can do that." This reminded me of one of my favorite short poems about the effectiveness of action in defensive beliefs. I've shared it before, but I just have to offer it again. It's called Stubborn Ounces by Bonaro Overstreet. To one who doubts the worth of doing anything if you can't do everything. You say the little efforts that I make will do no good. They never will prevail to tip the hovering scale where justice hangs in balance. I don't think I ever thought they would, but I'm prejudiced beyond debate in favor of my right to choose which side shall feel the stubborn ounces of my weight. It's that accumulation of stubborn ounces that will do it. Research has found that nonviolent protests are twice as likely to succeed as armed conflicts, and those engaging a threshold of 3.5% of the population have never failed to bring about change. Counting all eligible voters in the U.S., 3.5% would be about 8.5 million people. Tomorrow, June 14th, we have a chance to move toward that 3.5%. There will be several No Kings events in Tacoma, 2 in the 12 to 3 p.m. time range at People's Park and at the Pearl Street entrance to Point Defiance near the Defiant Goldfish, a good place for this day of defiance, along with one organized by the League of Women Voters from 3:30 to 5 p.m. on Tacoma Avenue South outside First United Methodist Church. There are numerous other events in nearby communities, and if you're planning to attend one, you might put the time and place in the chat to help others know where they could go. We'll put these other informations in there as well. And if street protests aren't your choice right now, I invite you to find some other way to join in the resistance tomorrow, wherever and whenever you can, adding your stubborn ounces to the scales of justice. Welcome to our work. It's a hard time, but we are all here, and so I want to make sure to welcome everyone and give you a couple of points if you're new to the space or are returning after a long ways of time away. We ask that you keep yourself on mute when you're not speaking, that you use the raised hand function to ask for a recognition, and that if you're doing something distracting, that you turn off your video, but when you can, have the video on so we can get to know you. We also use the chat for conversation and questions and answers throughout, and it's not disrespectful at all to carry on private conversations there. Just to note that this is recorded so that what you place in the message to everyone would be possibly publicly available. You can have private conversations and they wouldn't be. Also, we ask that we respect one another's space and not speak too much. I know I've talked too much already, but that we give everyone a chance, and that we speak out on things we care about so that others can hear our voice. And that Rob usually puts the norms that we have in the chat. So if you would do that again for folks, just take a look at those and put anything in the chat that you think would be useful to the group. If you're new and you represent a group and would like to share with us what you do, this morning when we ask you to introduce yourself, it's only a very short introduction of your name and your association. But if you'd like to speak for a bit to tell us what we can do to be participating with you, Teresa Power Dudas will put her email in the chat, and she arranges our partner spotlight so that you could come back another time to present what your group does and invite us to participate or seek help from you or seek help from us. So with that, I'd like to ask anyone who's new or returning, and if you're one of the speakers today, that'd be fine too, just to say your name and know what you're doing, what your position here is. And then Rob will recognize you, or I will if we see whoever we see on the screen, and just say hello. Nothing more than that. So raise your hand and we'll get going with a few introductions.
And I will say, if you can't raise your hand virtually in Zoom, you can also raise it. Just if you're on camera, especially, I can see it. So, yeah, go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, thank you. Daniel Gray. I am communication director for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Tacoma, and also recently was appointed to the Associated Ministries Board. And like to consider myself a community activist. So serve with Rosemary and A. Philip Randolph. So good to see Rosemary.
And Philip, we see your hand up as well.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I hope it's okay that I join. My name is Philip Lindholm. I'm on the Lakewood Planning Commission, just here to listen and learn.
Totally great that you're here. We really want everyone to learn together and look forward to hearing from you as well.
Thank you.
All right, I'm not seeing any other hands.
Just be sure if you would like us to know who you are and you can't get out to speak here, or you prefer not to, we can put anything in the chat and your information for contact, and that would be great. And we'll hear from our guests a little later and hear more about them.
Thank you, Rosemary, as always, for a thoughtful start to this week's meeting.
You're welcome.
And getting us set straight. So one short housekeeping thing before we launch into the This Week on the Street segment. We are under a bit of a time deadline this morning because at 9:30 we're planning to have our candidate forum with the candidates who are for Tacoma Mayor who are able to join us this morning. So we're going to try to get through our This Week on the Streets and partner spotlight and announcements this morning ahead of that 9:30 timeline. So the This Week on the Streets segment is an opportunity for folks to share what they're seeing changing in their community this week. Thankfully, we've seen the weather moderate. We're continuing to remain drier than usual, and temperatures are no longer spiking up into the upper 80s for this early pre-summer period. So looking at the 10-day forecast, there is not another heat wave in the near future. So that's good news. But we would like to hear from you if you're seeing changes on the street, and also if there are any particular needs that the 63 of us in this room may be able to help meet. The one reminder is that we ask you don't share the precise location of folks, because we do know that people may end up finding themselves a victim of a sweep if their direct location is mentioned. So if you do have a concern about an exact location, you can send me a direct message in the chat and we can connect outreach folks with that location. So let me open the floor. Anybody have anything to share? And feel free to raise your hand or come off mute and let us know what you're seeing in the community. Yeah, Teresa.
This is an announcement more than anything else, but a thank you to Dr. Jarvie and the Salvation Army. They delivered a freezer to the outreach supply closet. So now on those hot days, you can come by if you're doing outreach and pick up some frozen bottles of water. And we even have a limited number of containers, like cooler containers that you can keep using to gather those and deliver them. So thank you. Ask and you shall receive, right?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Bob, how are things on the peninsula?
Have some good news. So it is a change, but it's a very positive one. In the last month, we have been able to, with the help of the Homestead community, who has a home out here, to offer a wonderful referral from Family Promise. And then the West Wind stepping up to open up another apartment. We've housed 11 people in the last 30 days in the community. Huge win for the community, and just showing that more awareness and communication and partnering with other organizations really makes things good. So thank you all.
Great. We love having positive news, so thanks, Bob. Anyone else with what they're seeing in their community? I do know there's a couple of other items I want to make sure we bring up during this segment, but I want to open the floor, keep the floor open. Well, why don't I toss it over to Ed Jacobs? Ed, do you want to share about the upcoming memorial?
Yeah. Good morning, friends. On the 22nd of June, we'll have a homeless memorial at Glide. Wow. At Shiloh Baptist Church at 5 o'clock. We'll remember those that have died in the last 3 months when they've been homeless on the street. So please join us if you can. It will be live streamed on the Street Chaplains Facebook page. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. And do you have an idea yet of how many folks will be honoring this time?
I do not.
Okay, still working on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Lisa, there is a flyer that went out to those who are subscribed to the Street Chaplain's email. Let me see if I can grab it out of my photos here to drop it in the chat.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, there you go. or it will be coming through.
Yeah, and we will be sending it out to the listserv as well.
Awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you, Ed.
Yep.
And James, do you want to talk about the behavioral health survey? And thank you for being here. Like I just spring it on you there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I wasn't sure that I didn't prepare anything, but hi everyone. I'm James Pogue. I have been an active member of the coalition since before COVID, and sort of dropped off during COVID a little bit, but now I'm back. If you're not familiar with me, I oversee the specialty programs that serve homeless and recently housed folks at Comprehensive Life Resources, specifically our residential programs and our homeless outreach programs with the mental health sort of component. I have a bunch of programs that take too long to go into all that, but we're in the process of establishing ourselves at Comprehensive as a certified community behavioral health clinic, or a CCBHC. It's a national certification that requires us to have a variety of services. That's an integrated health model. Means when a person comes into us to get mental health services, they also could get a variety of supports, including housing and employment support, but also medical and dental, substance use. There's like 12 categories, and as Rob put me on the spot, I don't have my sheet in front of me, but what we're trying to do as part of the process of onboarding this new model is do a community needs assessment. So we built a survey, and we've actually sat in places in the community. We've gone to like farmers markets and stuff and just asked people to fill out a survey, whether they're just as long as they're a resident of Pierce County. We want to know sort of their perspective of the mental health needs in the community. And we ask people to identify, are they just a community member? Are they a provider? Are they a recipient of services at COMP or at anywhere? Or are they a supportive family member of services, I think? And then just sort of what is their understanding? And there's a bunch of questions like, do you think Pierce County has enough resources? If you ever needed resources, were you able to find it? If you weren't able to find it, what were the reasons, with a bunch of categories? So I'm hopeful to just get as many. It's anonymous, just so you know. I don't have any access. We have a marketing department that reviews and categorizes it, but we're hopeful to get a lot more participation on this survey from a lot more members of the community, both prospective clients or current clients, community partners, and just anybody. So I'll drop it in the chat, and I can send it out to the whole coalition. But if you have time to click on the link and do the survey, it's only about a 5-minute survey, and it'd be very helpful for us to sort of really do a deep dive community needs assessment on the behavioral health needs in Pierce County.
Thank you, James. And are you going to send that out to the mailing list as well?
Yeah.
That'd be awesome, because
I'll
that's
put it
just
in the
such a
chat
larger
here.
audience. Yeah.
Yep, I'll put it in the chat here, and then I'll drop it in the listserv.
Awesome. Thanks, James, and good to see you. All right. Anyone else with on the streets items? I did want to mention one thing. So Paula Anderson from New Hope reached out to me yesterday, and she's unable to be at the meeting this morning, but she raised the issue of that it might be helpful for those who are doing outreach near areas where the marches and protests will be happening tomorrow, to let folks know who are currently homeless in those areas that that is coming to their neighborhood, just so that they, for one, are aware, but so that they maybe are not overwhelmed by the number of people showing up in the place where they live, and also to make sure that they, if they would prefer not to be under the scrutiny of the enforcement that could come to those sites, that they could temporarily move away from those locations. So Paula was having her staff reach out to folks in the Puyallup, greater Puyallup area about that, and wanted me to mention it during this meeting as well, just in case you're touching base with people in the community and you feel like they should be made aware of the marches coming up tomorrow. So appreciate that. Dr. Jarvie, go ahead.
Hey, I don't know if it's just rumor stage yet, or Fox News or whatever, but I'm getting reports of ICE in Tacoma, shelters, daycares, schools. I haven't seen it in any news stories. I haven't seen it in any, anything that I can validate. I just, if anybody has any information or any personal experience, I don't want to hear rumors, but an actual personal, I would love to hear. I would love to hear that, because from what I've seen so far, is that the city of Tacoma and Pierce County, the city of Tacoma Police Department, and everyone except the sheriff of Pierce County have said they're not working with ICE and have no reports of ICE being, at our shelters or our food pantries or our daycare centers. But if anybody has any valid information on that, please share it with us, because I'm tired of the rumors.
Yeah, appreciate that, Dr. Jarvie. And I see your hand up, Whitney. Do you want to respond to that? And then I will too, if needed.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I can share a few things from firsthand things that have been shared to me. ICE conducted a raid, not yesterday, but the day before, or a series of raid operations. Places where they were included 2 different apartment complexes in the south side of the city. They went door to door. They made an appearance at BNI, and they were in the vicinity of several of our Tacoma public schools, as well as a couple of daycare facilities. So that information that I have has come from teachers, daycare facility operators, folks who witnessed it firsthand. La Resistencia reported yesterday a bus going into the ICE facility with 20 new detainees. Is unclear where those individuals came from. I personally went down to the detention center on that was Wednesday evening, and they had not seen anybody other than like one van kind of come in and out. But there were 2 buses missing from the parking facility at that time. So one of those buses came back yesterday containing about 20 individuals. Again, it's unclear if those folks came from like some type of a flight or, our community or somewhere else. I have not heard anything about yesterday, continued operations, but, an unconfirmed. So the one thing I will say is unconfirmed piece is that they may be utilizing EBT information somehow to track, to figure out, say, apartment complexes that they go to. That's one thing that folks have sort of put together, that's a common thread. But again, that part is speculative. But yes, they were here. They were conducting operations. It was centered around the Tacoma Lakewood border, all in the south end of the city.
Thank you, Whitney. And what the main thing I will add is that there certainly has been a flurry of reports, and then fewer instances where things have been able to be confirmed. There is ongoing conversation, I know, on multiple social media channels, asking folks to confirm information rather than spread rumors. So that's why what you're bringing up, Dr. Jarvie, is really a valuable topic, because we don't want to just create panic with misinformation in the community. And I did drop a graphic, and thanks to Sally Perkins for sending me the screenshot, because I missed it yesterday, of the advice for how to spread information and not panic. Drop that into the chat. So I'll end my comments there. And Sharon, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, hi. Hi, everybody. Good morning. So yes, we run a transitional, actually permanent housing, PSH building in Renton. And the ICE people came in plain clothes, unmarked cars, and tried to get into the building. And they were coming after a mother who had been with us for 6 years and a child who had who was a U.S. citizen. And they tried to get in the building, but we had our signs up saying this is private property. And so we trained our tenants and our staff, and the tenants did not let the ICE officials go and use the key fob and go upstairs and get this family. So they left, but what had happened is that the mother had just applied had been waiting for asylum to get approved, and she was not approved. And so they immediately came to deport her. In any case, the family was not caught, so to speak, and they fled, right? But that's the scary part, is that if they know, I mean, obviously, if you're applying for asylum, they know your address, they know everything. And then once you're so-called turned down, they can immediately come and get you. And then last week we had another family. So anyway, the first family is Salvadorian. The next family, the mother called us. It's one of our tenants, frantically saying that they captured her, her son. And so, and that's that family is Venezuelan. So we are trying to get legal services to, help figure out that case. So we have this is like ongoing, right? So this is like just a terrible situation. But we did train all of our, front desk people, staff people, and the importance of what a warrant looks like, and to look out for ICE.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon, for sharing that story. And so we can continue this conversation in the chat. I did want to shift gears now. We have a partner spotlight arranged for today with one of the Parks Tacoma Rangers. And I don't know, Darnell, if you're in the room. I'm not seeing you in the participants list right now, but if you are, if you can let me know, that would be great. If you're not, then we will move on, but wanted to double check. And Teresa, did you hear anything further from Darnell?
No, but I will circle back and ask him to come at another date.
Okay. That is fine. We're almost at our 9:30 time when we wanted to talk to folks who are running for mayor of Tacoma. So let me shift gears and see if Jan Hutchins is ready to take the reins and help us with my help as well, facilitating move into our candidate forum. Jan?
Thank you. And I'm looking to see if all the candidates are here. There's a couple of people who signed in with phone numbers, so I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to assume that they're here. And go ahead and say that I'm Jan Hutchins. I'm a member of the coalition. And what we all have in common is alleviating homelessness and spending Friday mornings with Rob. And today it is my honor to invite candidates for the mayor of Tacoma to speak to us in this forum. And as if you've driven through Tacoma, you may have noticed yard signs popping up, and that's because the mayor, Victoria Woodwards, is completing her second term, and we're going to be electing a new mayor. I wanted to start off by saying that someone recently asked me what the mayor does and what does the coalition care about it. So Pierce County Auditor Linda Farmer said that the mayor serves as the face of the city and sets the tone for policy. And so that's really important to us. We thought it would be prudent to invite the 6 candidates to come and meet with us today. Somebody mentioned something about the debate. This is not a debate. It's a forum, which is really a fancy word for saying discussion. Of the 6 candidates who were invited, 2 of them could not make it. That's Anders Ibsen, sends his regrets. He has a conflict and he does invite people to reach out to him. My guess is that all the candidates are willing to have people reach out to them. And so I will ask them to put their information in the chat, and I'll put Anders Ibsen's in the chat. Anthony Ginn was also running, said that he would circle back after the primaries. So first of all, I want to say to the candidates who are with us, thank you for your willingness to serve the city. Thank you for your willingness to spend time with us. We have some preset questions and some additional questions. Some of the questions came forth from last week's meeting. So the coalition has had a chance to share some of the things that they would like to know. Imagine when the candidates are speaking today, additional questions will come forth from the consortium. And in the interest of time, I'm going to ask you to put those questions in the chat. Rob Huff is going to gather the questions, look for common denominators. If you see someone ask a question and you have the same question, ask it again, because then that way Rob will know that that is of particular interest to people. And so now I get to introduce the candidates, and I'm going to start off by, as I introduce you, and I'm going to do in alphabetical order. I'm going to ask you to state your name. I'll state your name, and then please let us know how you prefer to be addressed. And then a little icebreaker question, which is, what do you think the 3 reasons that you believe people fall into homelessness? So we're going to start with Jesus Carlos, move on to Steve Havery, then John Hines, and then lastly, Whitney Stevens. So candidate Carlos, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And how do you prefer to be addressed?
So my name is Jesus Carlos. I go by Jesse. It's just easier that way. Facebook actually deleted my Facebook profile when I said that I was running for mayor. So I transitioned to Jesse. I don't like Jesus for mayor. So
okay. So when I ask everyone how they prefer to be addressed, I'm assuming you would all prefer to be addressed as mayor, but
I mean, one day, aspirationally, if the city of Tacoma will have me, I will love to be addressed as mayor. But
oh, righty.
Until that day.
Okay, so Jesse, please tell us what you think the 3 biggest reasons that people experience homelessness or fall into homelessness.
I think the 3 biggest reasons that people fall into homelessness is 1, economic opportunity. I believe that people get stuck in a quicksand-like scenario based on where they are and what they're doing. They are in a job whose wages don't keep up with inflation or the cost of living, and they aren't afford the ability to look elsewhere for better employment, and that leads to a wage crunch, which leads to a housing crisis, and they find themselves on the street. The second reason I would say is, I guess, 2 pronged. It's either mental health and substance abuse. I believe they're both 2 sides of the same coin. There's a problem there that needs to be fixed or treated, and I believe that is really the society's job to support those types of individuals. And the last one, why people find themselves on the street is really just not familiar with the community that they find themselves in, whether they be new to the city or new to the country, just being unfamiliar with what's available, how things work, can see people without housing for a period of time.
Thank you. So Steve, candidate Haverly, we're going to move on to you. And if you can let us know how you prefer to be addressed and your feeling about the top reasons people fall into homelessness.
And right now, Jan, I don't see Steve in the room.
Okay.
So why don't we move on to the next person and then come back if he does show.
Okay, so John Hines, that would be you.
Okay, can you all hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. You never know if the mic is hooked up the way it needs to be. Good morning, I'm John Hines. I'm a current city council member and running to be mayor. I think, at the core, I don't know if I need to give 3 reasons, but I'll start with 1, right? Homelessness is a housing problem. I mean, very clear. Greg Coburn's done a lot of research on this, right? So that's driving a lot of the costs of why we have homelessness. I think his analogy, or I think I've heard Garrett Nyland use this analogy of musical chairs, right? As there's fewer housing, the people who are less able to compete for that housing, or less have access to resources to enter that housing, are often the ones who fall into homelessness. So really the critical piece is is there enough housing, affordable housing, different types of housing available for people? We move down from that. Why do people persist into homelessness, or why do people stay, experiencing homelessness? I mean, I think it kind of gets into some other pieces there, right? The number 1 reason women and children experience homelessness is domestic violence, right? So domestic violence destabilizes the home. Women and children move out and are left homeless, or often in that situation. I think, as Jesse said, lack of access to opportunity is really a critical one. Do you have jobs and wages that can pay the types of rent in the community you're in? Right. So do you have access to those kind of resources? And if you lose a job or have those kind of challenges, are you then out of housing? And then, I think the last one that I always like to come back to, and I think Jesse really got to it too, is it's a lack of meaningful and permanent relationships in a community, right? So we think about this, and I'm a firm believer, I've heard this before. There are many people who live in homes who are experiencing mental illness. There are many people who live in homes who are battling substance use disorder. There are many people in homes who don't have jobs. Why do they still house and others aren't? Well, because they have meaningful, purposeful relationships with people who are taking care of them or giving them spaces to live. And so I think those 3 together, but really what's driving is the lack of housing.
Thank you. And candidate Hines, how do you prefer to be addressed?
John is just great.
Okay, thank you. So unless Steve has joined us, we're going to move on to Whitney Stevens with the same questions.
All right. Good morning. I was given a little space in case Steve had joined us, but good morning, everybody. I'm Whitney Stevens. I use she, her pronouns, and Whitney is just fine for addressing me. I think that homelessness is complex and simple at the same time. I think there's several main things, as has previously mentioned, but I'm going to say it in a little bit different ways. Wages have not kept pace with the cost of living. Our cost of living is incredibly high, which is our cost of housing, our cost of food, our cost of gas, etc. And our wages have not kept pace. This is a problem nationwide, but it's especially a problem here in the Tacoma, Pierce County, Seattle metropolitan region. To the inflation point, basic costs of things that are considered our basic social safety nets, things like healthcare and childcare. Honestly, so many people in our community are one healthcare emergency away from being homeless. And then lastly, I would say that the lack of community that has been mentioned, but so many people in our community end up being homeless because they do not have a network of folks to help support them when they do come into that one emergency. And that's largely because often the people that they know are also one emergency away from homelessness. And there is a lack of sort of community capacity to support each other. But really to me, it comes down to is, our cost of housing, and there's ways to address that, our cost of healthcare, and honestly, for any family, the cost of childcare. Childcare is currently more expensive than rent and mortgage in this area. So when you combine those basic expenses of existing and our lack of wage growth, those are the primary drivers.
Thank you. One of the questions that kept the coalition, almost everyone on the coalition was interested in talking about was sweeps. And this is going to be a 2-part question. The coalition feels that sweeps are expensive and ineffective, as well as cruel, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're going to ask your view on sweeps. John Hines, we'll start with you, and then Whitney, and then Jesus. Jesse. And so the 2-part question is, 1, what is your view on sweeps? And then secondly, if you're against the sweeps, what policies can you develop to ensure that they're discontinued? And if you think sweeps are necessary, why and what do they accomplish? So, John, we'll start with you.
Any time limit on that one, or you just answer the question?
Well, we're out of here by noon.
Oh, okay. No,
You know
I'll
what?
keep
This
it.
is an important question to us. So
Yeah, no,
2 or 3 minutes is just fine.
Yeah, no, okay. Well, that sounds good. Thanks to me. One thing I would I gotta be really honest with you folks. I really do not like the categorization of what we do when we address encampments, calling it a sweeps. I think that implies that we just move people and don't talk to them and don't ask them if they would like services or shelter or try to connect them with things. I think we have a lot of members of our HEAL team and a lot of people doing outreach in our community that are connecting with folks well before we remove encampments. So I just want to preface that first. So I guess that leads into my point. Like, do I like sweeps? No, I do not. I wish that when we made contact with folks that are on our streets, that they would accept the shelter and services that we had offered, or that we could continue to diversify the types of shelter and services we have offered in order to help them move off of the streets or off of kind of the rights of way and into shelter and housing. Because again, I am a firm believer that homelessness is a housing problem and we need to connect people to shelter and housing. Now, do I believe they're necessary? There are times, as we all know, where encampments grow so large or they become such a health and safety issue for the people living inside of them and for the people around them that we do need to address and remove encampments. And so while I do not like that, and I wish we were connecting more and more people to shelter and housing, and I am a firm believer in shelter and housing, as many of you know, and I think many of you really were supportive of me when I fought my neighbors to set up the tiny home village at 6th and Orchard. And that was the biggest thing I did in my first year on council, was setting up the first shelter north of 6th Avenue. But at the same time, I do recognize there are times when encampments get to the point where they have a real impact on people who are living in them and people around them. And so I think that's the nexus of which point we need to look at removing encampments, which is when it becomes a health and safety issue for the people living inside of them or the people around them. And I also think another component of this is just the ADA compliance issue, which is when encampments get so large or permanent encampments on the street get to the point that they block passage for people to move on our sidewalks and streets. That we also need to remove those encampments at that point in time. And so I believe in a balanced approach, but I see there is a place where removing encampments is a part of that balanced approach.
Thank you. Whitney, same question, and I can repeat it if you wish.
No, I don't need it repeated. I have thought many hours on this question. So I am wholly opposed to criminalizing the fact that someone does not have a home to live in. That is a categorical value that I have. I would never vote for a bill that essentially creates a sweep system. I believe it's flushing money down the drain. And if elected, I would do my best to build a coalition to repeal the current camping ban as it exists. That being said, there are issues, as John had said, where we do have issues of health and safety, ADA compliance, etc. However, the current legislation as it is being enacted is resulting in folks being swept, being moved along repeatedly over and over, oftentimes as soon as they get established. These folks who are living on the streets are being continually re-traumatized, which makes it harder to get them into housing. Moving them around makes it harder for service providers to build relationships and build trust in order to get them the services that they need. These are folks who have been continually traumatized. And in order to get them connected to services, we have to build a relationship of trust with them. And that is often not something that can be done in 5 minutes. Our HEAL team, from my understanding, both from testimony that I've heard from folks who provide it, as well as folks that in this group and folks that live on the streets, is that sometimes they show up 5 minutes before the police do, or they show up after the fact. And that is not meaningful outreach. That is not meaningful getting folks into services. Now, separate from that, there is an issue with health and safety, and folks should not have to come to their businesses to find that someone has defecated on their doorstep. That's not acceptable. But there are ways to address those problems, such as providing basic public facilities like bathrooms, such as supporting community work like the Common Good Closet, right? This is not something that we have an unlimited budget for at the city. Unfortunately, there is budget constraint realities, but I think there is so much that we can do with humanity and compassion that we can partner with, we can build coalitions, we can build relationships, and we can do trauma-informed and actual meaningful work to move this problem forward that do not involve re-traumatizing and criminalizing folks just for existing.
Thank you so much. Jesse?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. I think everybody's answers really get to the heart of the problem. The way I stand on it, I believe the sweeps, the way they're currently conducted, just aren't only ineffective, but are actively harmful to the communities that they're trying to help. I believe that sweeps right now really tackle the small business owner and the constituent in the city of Tacoma, as opposed to helping the actual people in crisis. It removes them from outreach teams that are working actively to get them into housing or provide them resources. And I think, you know, keeping them in place allows them to be identified, relationship build, and then see them in a sustainable solution. Where I think this meets a problem is in the small business community and then also the residents community where these encampments are taking place. And I do believe that there has to be a line in the sand in which if there is something crossed, then active removal has to take place. And that is public drug use, if you're a danger to anybody around or in your immediate vicinity, or if you are conducting a crime. I think that is grounds for removal. But besides that, I think having somebody stationary in place in an encampment will give people the ability, at least service works within the city, a exact location to the individual that they're trying to serve and actually give them an ability to build a relationship with that individual.
Thank you so much. We're moving on to, I think everyone agrees that the problem is getting worse. And so it's a really direct question. Why do you think the problem is getting worse? Whitney, we'll start with you and then move to Jesse and then to John.
Ooh, why is the problem getting worse? Well, I'm going to go back to one of the 3 pillars that I put as far as why folks are homeless, which is the complete lack of social safety net in this country. We are one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and there is absolutely no reason why we cannot take care of our community members for things like basic health care. Again, so many of our folks are living, not making a livable wage. They are making barely enough money to get by and our healthcare costs. And they are one healthcare emergency, one car accident, one car breakdown away from ending up on the streets. And too many folks in our community are in that situation to where there is not capacity within our community to support each other to the place where we would like to be. There is a problem with our housing costs, and the housing costs have to do with, as John mentioned earlier, the lack of development. We need more housing. We need more housing at all options and all income levels. And we need to make our housing more dense in order to make things like public transportation more effective. Right now, it's very difficult to live without a car in our society. And so these things are all compounding to help each other. But that's really, to me, especially now with the Trump administration, the complete gutting of any of our social safety nets. When you start talking about things like Head Start, when you talk about things like early education, if you have a child in this country, it is exorbitantly expensive to keep that child safe and loved and housed. When you're cutting SNAP and EBT benefits, when you're cutting all of these things that help keep our children safe and help keep our families working, it is almost impossible to keep us as a society not going into the place of more homelessness. And so as mayor, obviously some of these issues are significantly larger than just the city can problem solve. So what I would be doing as mayor is building relationships, telling those stories, and campaigning for change at higher levels. And we cannot do this alone. We have to do this together. And that is what my candidacy and my campaign is all about, that we need to forge rock solid partnerships with other jurisdictions and organizations if we are going to survive the next few years. Because I really, truly believe that we can build a city where kids can ride bikes, neighborhoods are filled with beauty, and every person knows that they belong. And that's my ultimate goal.
Thank you so much. Jesse, same question.
Can you please repeat the question?
Yes. Why do you think the problem of homelessness is getting worse?
All right. Personally, I think the problem of homelessness is getting worse because of fear of providing outreach too aggressively and fear of repercussions if you take bold action. I believe that, again, there needs to be a line drawn in the sand by the community to what we are going to allow within our community and what we're not, and then empower our Tacoma Police Department and our social services providers to enact those in our stead. I think very clear and defined roles of what we're going to be able to support and what we're not going to tolerate is relatively going to make us a less habitable city as compared to a Seattle or a Portland to repeat offenders of drug use and crime. If we make that readily available, I think we are going to solve a majority of the problems that we see as social challenges with providing resources to homelessness. This is one of the things that I believe as a mayor of Tacoma, I bring extremely well to this platform. I am very, very capable of managing budgets, and I am very, very good at leading in times of crisis. I can find resources in budget optimization, and I can run this city through the city manager very effectively and hold them accountable. Thank you.
Thank you so much. John?
Oh, thank you. No, this is thank you for the conversation. I think there's a couple pieces of why it's getting worse. So number one, I would say that a key piece is a lot of the pandemic aid and ARPA funding that we've received from the federal government, the state government, that we in the city of Tacoma put directly into lots of temporary and emergency shelters has faded. And so if you follow the news, you're seeing that we're having a lot of budget challenges with that. So that's kind of one balance of the amount of resources that were available during the pandemic are not quite the same as where they were before. I think a second part of it is, I often say, like, there's two ways to address homelessness as Bureau City, and I talk about this at the Association of Washington Cities level because I'm on the executive board. One way is to say when people are homeless in our community or experiencing homelessness, we help them and try to help them with shelter and services. Another way is to say we don't have homeless people in our community because they're just not allowed to be here. And I think we're seeing the downstream effects of some of the communities around us making policy choices that are saying that now that Boise is gone, that people can move to places where there are shelter and services. That's why I'm a big proponent and a big supporter of the unified regional approach, which we're going to talk about later, which is we need more cities around the city of Tacoma to take on, I don't want to say their fair share, help the people who are from their community, right? I did the point in time count, I was in Fife. And one of the things that they said to me, the outreach workers I was with, and maybe they're on the call here, is if you want to be homeless in Fife, you have to really want to be homeless in Fife, because there's nothing there for you, or very limited things there for you, and so we have to reimagine how we provide service to their places. So I think that's one reason why we're seeing it more and more present in the city of Tacoma. I know this group does not like our policies around encampments, but we are more welcoming to people experiencing homelessness with more services than any other city in the county. And so it is showing up here more and more. And then I think just the ongoing increase in housing costs, right? We're just seeing housing costs get more and more expensive, which we go back to my first point, which is that driving a lot of the lack of housing and lack of affordable housing that's pushing people closer and closer to the edge. and some people are tipping off into homelessness. So, you know, multifaceted approach to try to address a bunch of those things. Yeah, so that would be my take of why it is getting worse. And then, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. We're going to start talking about affordability now, and the questions will go to Jesse, and then John, and then Whitney. And the question is the city doing enough to create housing that is affordable at every price point? So Jesse, you want to start us off?
Of course. And I'm going to start out with saying a resounding no. So the way I see it, the housing affordability crisis in the city of Tacoma is a mixture of a limit in the domestic economy of Tacoma and the proximity of high-income jobs in its surrounding cities. So people from Seattle, people from Bellevue, people from Olympia are able to live in Tacoma, make a wage that people that are working in Tacoma are not able to match, right? And so that is going to drive up housing costs, and it's really going to push the average housing costs out of reach of the average worker within the city of Tacoma. There was a study published last year that said that Tacoma has the third least affordable housing in the United States. Out of, I think they did 170 cities in the United States. And that wasn't because of the housing costs. We are actually $600 cheaper on average than the city of Seattle. But what it is, it's in relation to the average wage that is earned in the city of Tacoma. I think this is a two-pronged issue. I think that the city of Tacoma needs a domestic economy that provides like wages for the people that live here and work here to be able to afford housing in this city. I think there needs to be more there needs to be more small businesses. There needs to be more entrepreneurs in this city. And we need to foster that in the communities that we want to see industry in. Secondly, there aren't affordable housing units being built because they are catering to people that are living in Seattle, living in Bellevue, working there but living in Tacoma. In order to get affordable housing units built in the city, we need to make it economically viable for those companies to build those units in this city. Balance sheet management and profitability are the only thing that those companies are going to look at when they're building these units. So what does that look like from a policy standpoint? It looks like making it easy, providing a template that we already allow as far as a housing structure or plan, and just plugging and placing that wherever we deem we want low-income housing. It gets rid of all the red tape. People that are ready to invest in an area buy the land and put it right where they want it. And it is a streamlined process that provides housing very quickly in a templated environment that people can afford. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Yeah. Thank you. Well, you know, this is a great question, right? And I think there's a couple things the city has done. So I'll talk about what we've done, and I'll talk about what I hope to do, right? So, I mean, I think the biggest things we've really tried to do is one, you know, home in Tacoma, more housing types, more housing options, right? We're trying to provide more places for people to live in our city with the goal of trying to bring the costs down. The number one driver of cost of housing is square footage. So the smallest house in the nicest neighborhood is going to be cheaper than the biggest house in the nicest neighborhood. Very clear. So if we're adding more housing stock in all neighborhoods and we're looking at density and smaller footprint housing, because it's going to have to be smaller to fit onto the lots, we're going to see more affordable housing throughout the community, right? So it will be smaller, it will be more affordable. I think, so that's one piece, and that's just the market equation, right? We do that. When I was on the council in 2021, we passed the 1/10 of 1% sales tax for affordable housing and homelessness. Very proud. House Bill, I think 1490 is the number, but happy to pass that. So we have permanent funding going into our housing trust fund. What those dollars do, those permanent sales tax dollars, along with our money from the federal government, which hopefully I think CBDG might not be with us much longer, but we have in the past leveraged our federal dollars and our local tax dollars to pay for really truly affordable, low, permanent supportive housing, people making 30% of AMI and lower. So Patsy Sir O'Connell Place, Korean Women's Association, THA properties, there's Lehigh properties. We have put a lot of money into building that kind of housing. So there's some more housing options we're trying to get in the market side. We're putting millions of dollars every year into permanent affordable housing and housing that's really affordable. And then in the mid-range, we're looking for different tools at which we can try to address some of that through maybe some tax exemptions and bonuses. So as Home in Tacoma lays out, we have some bonus structures and some tax exemptions that are built in to try to encourage more affordability to kind of bring that number down even further for kind of that mid-range of affordability. The resources are not enough. The state's put a lot of money through State Housing Trust Fund. I would say I was on the YWCA board back before I came on council. We built the 55 units of permanently affordable housing for women that were leaving our domestic violence shelter. And one of the things I learned back then is we are at a severe disadvantage compared to our county of the north and the city of the north. They have a housing levy, a property tax levy that passed in the 1970s that generates millions of dollars that they are then able to use to support programming like nonprofit housing development that builds that most affordable housing. That is something we're going to have to talk about in the city. The last time we put it on the ballot was 2001. It was for seniors and veterans, and it failed. So the question of, do we have an appetite as a community to pass a property tax levy that could help us compete with the people of the county of the north and build more housing? Is it something else we're going to have to do? But then, so I think that's what we're trying to get to. I would agree with Jesse. There's a whole other component I don't want to go on too long about the wages and jobs that people have in this community. We also are the utility. How are we keeping our utility costs low? Because when we talk about housing costs, it's utility costs and housing costs together. On the Pierce Transit Board, so how are we aligning our transit decisions and investing in that to best meet people's needs and keep our housing affordability low? There's lots more to it, but I'll stop there because I think I just want to yield my time.
Thank you so much. Whitney, we're moving on to you.
Yeah, thank you. I think that, as you guys know, both from everyone in this room, from your work, as well as from the answers that have come previously from the other candidates, this is not an easy issue. So some of the things that I want to cover is that I think basically what I would say is what we've been doing is great, but the problem is continuing to get worse. So what we are doing is not necessarily working or solving the problem. So we cannot continue to just do the same thing over and over again and expect to get different results. So there's a couple of things that I want to throw out for conversation, and this is as mayor, part of the job to me of the mayor is helping drive these conversations with actual valid data and shaping these conversations in ways that actually move us forward. So per the Master Builders Association, Tacoma actually has the lowest cost of developmental permitting in the county. We do not charge an impact fee. We do not charge a variety of other fees. And so one of the things that I hear is, oh, we need to make it cheaper for developers to build housing. I don't see that translating right now. By not having other fees like impact fees, which I know is on the agenda for council this year, we are as a city having to pay for a lot more of the infrastructure that goes along with housing development, which takes money away from other resources. Home in Tacoma is absolutely a great step in the right direction for providing market-based solutions to the housing issues that can be solved by market-based solutions, but not all of the housing problems can be. So there's a couple of other things here. We have the federal Fair Cloth Amendment, which limits our number of affordable housing units. However, we have not even come close to hitting that limitation. And so I would really like to see us push to that limitation because that's a step in the right direction. And the last thing I would say is the investing of the dollars that we have leveraged and the county has leveraged into affordable housing. I would like to explore the ideas of getting some land into community land trusts or social housing. Properties where folks can live in there, they pay a percentage of their income based on income. That money then continues to reinvest itself into the buildings and potentially into other buildings. This is something that Seattle just passed last year, and Tacoma for All has brought someone down to really talk about this model. I've done some follow-up reading, and I find this model really interesting for a variety of reasons. One is that in other areas, cities, and countries, that has shown to be fiscally sustainable. And as John alluded to, we don't know if the CBD grants, the community development block grants, are going to go away. And so we need to be able to develop things that are revolving doors rather than one time spent and never getting it back. The other thing that I would like to put into this conversation here with that is we cannot fund social housing the way that Seattle did. To the point that has been made, we do not have the payroll level to be able to do a payroll tax. And honestly, our economy and our senior citizens, our lower income folks, are folks who have managed to buy a home but are barely holding on by the skin of their teeth because of other costs, cannot afford more property taxes. So we're going to have to get more creative. We're going to have to push for other options, and we're going to have to really try to solve that together, whether that's hybridizing some of our funds with matching philanthropy dollars, whether that's building relationships and leveraging dollars together with other organizations. But ultimately, we need to think about our funds rather than one-time expenditures as how do we continue to build a bank that pays it forward as we go forward continually.
Thank you so much. Before we ask Rob about questions in the chat, I'm going to talk briefly about the URA, or Unified Regional Approach. And I'll ask any candidate that wants to speak up first to go ahead and tell us, first of all, what is the Unified Regional Approach and how do you see the city participating? And if you want, we can just start off with the alphabetical order again.
I guess I can go first.
Okay,
right?
John.
There you go. So the Unified Regional Approach is a conversation that came out of a initial conversation we had between the county council and city council. We had our first kind of ever joint meeting. This is 2023. And one of the conversations that came out of that was this idea of this unified regional approach to homelessness. We have an example just north of us, the King County Regional Approach to Homelessness, which we can talk about if people want to talk about that part later, but that is kind of a model which is trying to basically take some of the service contracts and the funding, pool it, and be more strategic countywide versus just having each city kind of do their piece that they feel like they should be doing. So that conversation started through there was a select committee on homelessness where there were council members like myself and Councilman Rumbaugh sat with the county council and talked through this, and then it's kind of grown into this unified regional approach. We have a consultant on board that is helping us formulate it. We've had a few meetings that is kind of happening right now. We had one at the Environmental Service Center out in Pierce County to kind of start formulating this conversation of what a unified regional approach would look like. I think that is most likely the way to go. We have to go that direction because, as I said earlier, 80% of the shelter beds in the Pierce County are inside the city of Tacoma, and we all know that 80% of the people who fall into homelessness do not come from the city of Tacoma. It's just where the preponderance of shelter and support is. And so we need to find a system to coordinate investments into other parts of the county and other cities and understand how we're working together. I think the other part is how do we avoid kind of duplication and duplicative services, right? So if we have multiple people doing outreach at the same time with the same groups of people, is there a way we could better, understand who's doing outreach, who's doing what where, and really kind of align some of that work and make some high leverage investments because all our money pooled together, we can do more. So I'm a firm believer of it because I think it's something we have to do. And I talk to a lot of our partners in their cities and at the county about, what that looks like. So.
Thank you. Thank you for going first. So Whitney or Jesse, which one of you would like to jump in?
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in. So yeah, I believe in the URA. I think it's the first step in the right direction of really streamlining business optimization. You don't know what investment in a problem is if you don't know how much you're contributing to that problem and what a basic level of need for the people that it's being served is. I think this should have been done in the beginning, but the fact that it's being done now means that it's this first step in the right direction in where we can actually, figure out what these resources being given to these populations are and have a consolidated effort so that every dollar is impactful and not over-serving or underserving a community.
Thank you so much. Whitney?
Thank you. I'd like to give a shout out to Garrett for sharing last week about his dashboard, because I've spent quite a bit of time actually on the dashboard playing with those levers, looking at that funding. And I think to John's point, that is one of the biggest reasons why we need this unified regional approach is actually because we really need, as the city of Tacoma and as mayor of Tacoma, I would push that we cannot carry the load for the entire county. Under Bruce Dammeier, the county really stepped away from almost its entire obligation towards any sort of emergency shelter, which has left the city of Tacoma carrying that. And when you look at other cities, you look at cities like Fife, you look at Gig Harbor, you look at even Lakewood, the percentage, like Fife, and according to the data that we have access to, and that's another problem, the fact that we don't even have access to good data. Bless you, Garrett, for putting this all together. But the data we have access to shows us that many jurisdictions in our area are putting absolutely $0 that are not direct pass-throughs towards addressing homelessness. And as John has said, not everybody who becomes people become homeless in every community in this county, regardless of how much they want to believe that or not, or they push people out or not. And so I think that that's a big piece that the unified regional approach needs to bring forward, and at the elected official level be driving forward, that we need to bring this to a more equitable distribution. And, you know, my approach to some extent is, okay, so Gig Harbor doesn't want to open a shelter for folks to become homeless in their community. Like, I am wholly opposed to that, but fine. You know what? I'm not going to fight that political fight on their turf. They need to give us dollars then, because we are the ones then taking care of their community members who are not being cared for by their own community. And so that's the collaboration, and that's the conversation. You know, as a woman, as a mother, these are hard conversations that we need to have, to sit down and say, what is our common ground that we can come to? How can we compromise? How do we bring long-time relationships that, you know, we've had? I've worked at the county level doing budgets. I've worked at the county level creating these nonpartisan solutions. And I've also seen how much partisan divide can really separate us. And so regardless of, you know, where we all stand on the issue, I think that we need to solve it. And that's what I'm looking most forward to with that unified regional approach, is actually everybody carrying the weight that they need to be carrying.
So Whitney, you mentioned Garrett's dashboard, and not everyone was here last week. So in a nutshell, will you describe that? Yeah.
So Garrett, you probably, please let me know afterwards if I do a poor job of explaining this. Garrett has created a Power BI dashboard with data. You know, he did a contract with the county and received a whole bunch of data about essentially funding sources. So he compiled federal, state, and local funding sources, what money is coming in to these folks. So are we getting federal dollars? Are we getting state dollars, et cetera? And then who is receiving all of those dollars? It's not 100% comprehensive, but it's a pretty darn good snapshot. And one of the things it shows, for example, is that like the city of Fife is essentially spending almost no money out of their own actual budget. They are only doing a pass-through of state dollars that they are allocated based on a formula to address homelessness. And so they are passing those dollars directly through, but that's the only thing that they are contributing to this. And I think that's really important. The other thing that I've really appreciated about this dashboard was the ability to really see where are our dollars going into, and how much are we putting into shelter versus long-term housing solutions versus, you know, specialized programs, say, for veterans, et cetera. And it gives us, without data, we don't know what's working. And so having worked in grant, so I served on the Fund for Women and Girls Fund out of GTCF for like 5 years doing grant distribution. And one of the things that I really learned through that experience is there is a balance for nonprofits between collecting data and providing data being burdensome, and the necessity of having data so we know what is working. And so I think that there's a balance to be struck there. But this dashboard was really illuminating as far as who's putting money where we need to be. And to the credit of the current city council, Tacoma has stepped up. We are paying several million dollars, like I believe it's either between $6 and $8 million a year out of our general fund to fund shelters. Nobody else in the county is providing that kind of money, not even Pierce County itself. And that's something that needs to change because we cannot bear that burden alone.
Thank you so much. Before I ask Rob to share what was in the chat, I just want to say, I think it takes a special person to run for office these days. So thank you, each and every one of you, for your willingness to do that. And Rob, what type of questions have come up in the chat?
So there's been, if you've been able to see the chat, you've definitely seen a number of comments, statements, those kinds of things. I'm guilty of putting some in myself. But the questions that I'm able to tease out, one is regarding housing options for those with the lowest incomes. What levers does the city have control over, and how can we better support nonprofits and individuals working to create basic shelter and housing? What roadblocks or costs might be able to be waived to make that effort more effective? And we can just kind of open the floor to all three of you if any of you would like to take that.
I'm happy to start again.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah, no. So I think, so I'm reading the chat. So I have there's lots of questions I want to answer, Rob, but I'll start with this one, right? So here's the deal, right? And I'm going to use a real simple analogy. Brand new cars are always more expensive than used cars. Brand new housing is always more expensive than housing that's been around for a while. So if we want to really keep housing affordable, we have to build enough to relieve the pressure off of the people who are in the affordable housing right now. That is the only fast way we can do this. So what are the issues we talk about? The Merkel Hotel, the Tiki housing. Why did the rents go up so fast? A developer bought them because the rents were underpriced, turned them over, and raised the rents. And we're seeing that more and more in our community. So if we want to protect people who are in those really affordable housing units, we have to build more to relieve the pressure off of those units. That's one way. Because when I talk to people out in the streets, they're not saying, I can't find, it's that my rent has gone up so much that it's pushing me out. Not that I'm looking for new housing and I can't find something I afford. It's like, no, like I'm being forced out. And so that's something we have to think about with that. The state stepped in, there's rent limits to how much can go up. The city has stepped in on some of those. So there's some management of that cost. But I think the building more is important. To your point about how we can help more nonprofits and private, I mean, that's where we come with our funding, our BRAVE funding, our NCS and community services funding, where we can be giving it to nonprofits who are doing this work and providing hopefully shelter and things like that. As Whitney said, we're using general fund dollars, MSUD funding, mental health substance use disorder funding, and trying to push that through. An interesting idea I have, just because I guess I'm on the council right now, Ryan Booker brought up an idea of making it easier for people if they want to host people on their properties, like we do for nonprofits and churches, allowing property owners to host people, a certain number within a certain reasonable amount, on their properties if they want people to live there. And so that's something I'm exploring right now and updating our code to allow something like that. That's another removal of a barrier. If you're someone, private property owner, and you'd like to allow people to live on your property, we are going to try to make it a little easier for you to do that and try to remove some of the barriers and see what that looks like. The land trust, I see in the comment there, land trust, all the above. I guess I would just say all the above model. Land trust, affordable housing, more housing, direct subsidies, looking for creative ways like letting people try to address people in different housing needs. It's all of the above.
Thanks, John.
So, I'm gonna jump in and agree with John on a lot of those things is all of the above, but I think that it's also, what I've seen over the last few years is personally a lack of leadership out of the city manager's office on this issue for the all of the above. The exploring the more radical things like social housing, like community land trusts, like, amending the code to allow more radical solutions. These are things that are being initiated by council or not being initiated at all. And that's something where, to how we opened this conversation, what does the mayor do? The mayor has a big piece to play in shaping the policy direction. Now, that's not an exclusive thing. The policy direction is set by the mayor in collaboration with the city council by all means, but the mayor is the only full-time person who you elect, whose, to me, primary responsibility will be driving that agenda forward. And the mayor's office will be the frontline person holding the next city manager accountable to making those things happen. So that's something that I see. And I would like to see this type of coalition actually meeting regularly, providing with options. I would like to see research being done. I would love to see, let's activate, here's a thought actually, I'm a product of UW Tacoma and the urban planning program. So plug for my alma mater, let's have the actual urban studies, one of the classes do their capstone projects about what lever the city should pull to create more social housing or to create more housing. And then does the city enact that? In order to make these things happen as we move forward in this era of constricting budgets, we're going to have to do things that are not conventional. We're going to have to leverage community assets. We're going to have to build these partnerships, and we're going to have to rely on things that are not just the textbook, what we've always done. So that's the piece that I really bring to this table, is about that collaboration, that community-based leadership, and bringing all of those people to the table and validating those voices of lived experience.
Yeah, I'd just like to, so on the housing affordability, how do we make more affordable housing? How do we keep it affordable for a long period of time without it being pulled up and resold to the public as more expensive housing? There has been a lot of research in technology adaptations of cryptocurrencies into land trusts. I know everybody hears cryptocurrency and they're immediately like terrified of the whole solution, but embedded in the Ethereum blockchain is the ability to write smart contracts. What this does is it basically automates the ability to hold a land trust, and then you can democratize it against a community. So what does that do? You can build affordable housing that's subsidized by a city. You can sell it back to the public. The city can get paid back a percentage, and then all the revenue that is generated by that social housing goes right to the public and locked for a certain amount of time in that cryptocurrency, whether it be 50 years, whether it be 100 years. It is a rental cap. It is a rental cap on those units for a set amount of time, held by the community. And they can unlock it by selling those back to whoever's going to pay the highest amount for it. But that's how you give control to the community on whether they want to keep those housing units affordable for the long run. There's a lot of papers about it. It's really easy to enforce. There isn't a technology company that does it on the West Coast. So we would have to build that technology here, which is actually not that hard to do. I bring these types of solutions to the city of Tacoma. I teach this at Harvard in the extension school. City manager doesn't, I'm sure, know about a lot of these things. And as mayor, I would put these ideas into the bowl of good ideas that the city council has. I think I bring a unique and diverse background of experiences and just information that can be very beneficial to the city of Tacoma and the housing crisis and other crises as well.
Thank you. And there simply are too many questions in the chat, but I will mention a couple of others. One that was brought up by Rosemary, and this is summarized, so Rosemary, tell me if I get this wrong, but it's in terms of the unified regional approach at the county level, what incentive do smaller communities have to put funds into homelessness and housing affordability? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a really thorny one. John has gone first on every question, so I'll spare him a moment to think about his answer, because I'm sure he'll have a great one. It's a thorny question. And it's one of those things that there isn't a great answer. And I think that the demonstration of this is honestly is Pierce Transit. We have, I was involved with the Save Our Buses campaign way back in 2009 when Pierce Transit, as a result of the financial crisis, had to cut their services dramatically. And what we saw with that was, and what we've seen with other public transit issues, is that some communities just don't want to do it. They don't see the investment. They don't think it matters to their communities. And so part of that, I think, is there is a carrot and stick approach. Part of that is the unified regional piece. Part of that is potentially at the county level, being able to pull levers at the county level that we see funding or lack thereof. And part of it is sustained pressure and campaigning. It's building relationships. It's having hard conversations. It's bringing folks into these conversations to make them compelling, whether that's involving other electeds like fire, whether it's bringing in community leaders, whether it's bringing in philanthropists. There are ways to bring this conversation to the forefront, to bring and enact social pressure, to bring folks to activating folks in those communities to public comment on their elected officials, to their elected officials. Like, those things are complicated and they're not guaranteed. But as a leader, I believe that so much of leadership is about showing up. And if you are showing up every single day for that outcome, progress will be made. And that's something that we need to do every single day, is having focus on what really matters to our community and what moves the needle for our residents and for human beings and compassion.
Thank you. And Jesse and John, anything you would like to say on that question?
Could you restate the question, please?
Yeah, it's more of a countywide question, but it's in terms of the unified regional approach. What incentive do other communities, smaller communities, have for putting funds into homelessness and housing affordability?
I think at the end of the day, it's just an accountability issue. If we have metrics showing that we are over supporting those communities, then we need to be able to hold them accountable. And I think the mayor position is in a unique position to bang a drum loud enough to get enough buy-in to actually hold those communities accountable. So it's just making noise and making sure people pay attention.
Thank you, Jesse. So we are almost at our time. And were there any questions that either of the candidates saw in the chat that they wanted to make sure they could address before we wrapped up? Go ahead.
I'll take a moment here. And not to go back to this, but I guess just I'm looking forward to a conversation with some of you folks, whether or not I'm the mayor or not, because I'll be here on the council for the next 3 years. And I'd like the conversation to move away, or we can talk about how we address encampments and people on the streets, but I really depend upon you folks to help me, like, what does better look like? Because I'll just be very honest. I was on the council in 2020 and 2021, and we didn't remove any encampments except for supreme health and safety issues. And no one here is saying we need to go back to 2020 when we had very large encampments in multiple parts of our city. Everybody, I think, recognizes that that was not great. We've also done things like hand washing stations and bathrooms. We've tried some of that. And we had some challenges with it that I'm happy to talk to folks about. And then the point about the police and drug dealers. Police departments are arresting lots of drug dealers right now. We're doing lots of set missions to address that. So we're working on these pieces. And I know Sally's questions. Sally, we could chat later about that specifically. But I would love to just talk more with you all about these pieces, because we've landed in the space we're in for a lot of reasons. I don't think where we are is good, to be honest. But I do understand how we got here, and I would depend upon you folks to help me understand how we move forward in a better and more positive direction. And I'm just going to have some questions. And I would just say for you all, the 3 questions I'm going to ask is the solution going to move fast enough to address the acute issue of people living unsheltered on our streets, which I saw in the comments, like the unified regional approach is not going to move fast enough. So is the solution not going to move fast enough? Number two, if we do it, will we be able to identify a sustainable funding source in order to pay for it over the long term or understand how we're going to fade it off over what's it going to look like over time? Because as you're seeing, we put millions of dollars into shelter and housing. Those beds are coming offline and we're stuck in a really tough space. And then number three, if we come up with a solution and we can pay for it, how are we going to make sure the people who are currently unhoused on our streets are going to take advantage of that and make sure it's not a use of money that is ineffective? So I just thank you for having time for me to be here. This is a topic I'm very passionate about, and I'd love to talk to you more about that. But I'm going to have some real questions too, and I'm happy to answer your questions about that. So please follow up with me. Sally, I know will follow up with me right after we get off this call, and we'll talk soon. Thank you all for having the time, and thank you to Whitney and Jesse. It's been great. This has been a very good conversation.
Jan, anything else we need to do to wrap up this segment?
Yes, I would like to ask one thing. Since we're going into Father's Day weekend, if each of the candidates can share one piece of wisdom that they received from their father or father figure.
I love that. So I don't know that I have a specific piece of advice. Sorry, Kat. I will fully disclose, my dad and I have been a little bit at odds the last few years because he is politically very conservative and we don't agree on a lot of things. But what I will say, my dad instilled in me is a value of service. He was a Rotarian and we showed up at every single event. We did spaghetti feeds. We made seniors pancake breakfasts. We put together garage sales to benefit scholarship funds. And as a kid, tagging along, doing those things with folks for whom the only goal, regardless of any other values, was the betterment of our community, instilled in me this idea of showing up and public service. And I think that's something I can really thank my dad for.
That's lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I'll preface this with saying that my dad is probably the most interesting man in the world, and I'm always trying to be as cool as he is. But with that, his rules or key to success for me when I was growing up was, at the end of the day, if you do anything as fast as you can and as hard as you can for as long as you can, and you haven't succeeded or somebody else has beaten you, then at the end of the day, you weren't able to do it. Taking that into consideration, I've never been unsuccessful at something doing anything as fast as I can, as hard as I can, for as long as I can. I've beaten out the odds in a lot of different things in my life because of those simple words. And I'm hoping that, you guys elect me as mayor because I am trying as hard as I can, as fast as I can, and we'll do it for as long as I can. So thank you.
Thank you. And John, you get to wrap us up.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. Jesse kind of took mine, which my dad always said, all you can ever do is your best, and you're the only person that knows if you did your best, and as long as you did your best, that's all you can do. But second piece of wisdom that I have a moment is, he used to also say that in the world, John, you only can control what you can control. And if every day you wake up and think about making what you can control better, that's the best you can do. So that's something else I take into my kind of mode when I think about everything I do, is how can I do my best on what I can control.
Thank you all again. Rob, it's all yours.
All right. Yeah, thank you to all the candidates for being here and your patience, and good luck in the primary. And Jan, thank you so much for all your work to pull this together today.
Oh, Rob, I would like to say one more thing.
Sure.
We did hear that Steve Haverly was going to be with us. When I sent out a confirmation, I sent it to his campaign manager. So I don't want people to think that he didn't show up. It's possible that there was a glitch between the two of them.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Appreciate that, Jen. All right, so let's make a shift, somewhat of a shift, to our regular government updates. And I know that our government partners have had to stay on this call a lot longer than usual to offer updates today. So offer a little bit of grace there. But do we have anybody from the city of Tacoma on the call for updates today? I didn't see anybody looking through the roster, and that's, excuse me, okay. How about updates from Pierce County Human Services? Hi, Devin.
Good morning, everyone. I have two sort of big updates from Pierce County. The first one is that we will be presenting our inclement weather plan to the Health and Human Services Committee on Tuesday at 9:30 a.m. Might be good for those folks that haven't been in the know with the work we've been doing around inclement weather. We utilized an inclement weather short-term task force to rewrite our threshold plan, as well as our policies and procedures and what would be considered eligible costs with funds. And we also used that time to craft a request for proposals so that we could get $100,000 out to the community for inclement weather response. That RFP is not quite out yet, but it will be next week. I will make sure that folks know and that it is spread widely to our community, especially for people that are interested in getting some of those funds to help during inclement weather response. So that's happening Tuesday at 9:30 Health and Human Services Committee. And then also with the Health and Human Services Committee on Tuesday, we will be presenting our second year funding recommendations for the homeless housing program. That is our largest funding opportunity and funds the majority of our interventions for homeless services. That includes things like street outreach, safe parking, emergency shelter, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, day center services. So it really is the bulk. In the last year, we funded about $17 million. Our funding recommendation for this year is a little bit lower at $15 million due to some reductions. And so we're going before the Health and Human Services Committee to potentially get approval to move that forward to full council vote. So for those providers that are on this call that would like to support that effort to get that passed, the contracts start July 1st. So we do need to get it passed relatively quickly. So for those providers that would like to support, you're welcome to come. But I wanted to make sure everyone knows that that is on the docket and will be discussed on Tuesday. I'm going to drop a link to the resolution in the chat in case folks are curious to learn a little bit more about it. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the inclement weather presentation. So that is all I have, and happy to take any questions if there are some.
Not seeing any hands shoot up right yet. Nope, no questions.
All
You're
right,
off the
thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Devin. So let's move on to updates from our friends at the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department. I see both Isaiah and Brogan on the call. Isaiah, take the reins.
I will take the reins and Brogan will step in if she has to. She's quite good at that. Let me get my notes here. Okay, so for those that maybe don't know who I am, or just a quick reminder, I am Isaiah Cockcroft and I work for the health department under our street medicine team. So I'm going to give some basic updates from our street medicine team today. So Monday we fully deployed. So again, fully deployed means our nurse practitioner, our RN, and our doctor and outreach workers go out in the fields, give out supplies, do wound care. And we had just our nurse deployment on Wednesday. So we had our RN and our outreach team go out Wednesday. Fortunately, today I will be there as well. We will be at the We Care block party, which is on Puyallup Avenue, I believe, and I can get the address for that. I thought I wrote it down. That'll be from 9 to 2. So I know there's food there. There's going to be folks with services for opioid use disorder, as well as wound care from us, and just basic medical supplies and food. So if you or any of your clients or participants want some services, come on down to We Care. Additionally, we are working with Catholic Community Services and associated ministries to get a leasing agreement to use their parking lot. So the general model for those, again, as a reminder, is that we're going to have a mini RV kind of type vehicle sit on the parking lot, and we're going to have a cargo van go out and do outreach and send folks down to the Coachman to get services. So we're working on getting a spot over in Hilltop at Associated Ministries. And finally, and perhaps most excitingly, we have a link. So we have a link that's not currently on our website, but will be quite soon. I will share the link in this chat, and I will also send it in an email. But this link is anyone for like any community member who is concerned about a group of people or an individual who is experiencing unsheltered homelessness and is requiring medical assistance. So this link just basically goes through like where did you see this person, how many people, what's the location, what's the medical concern, and just a few various questions. And that information will go to us, and then hopefully we were able to respond in the appropriate amount of time. So I will be sharing that once I am done speaking. And again, I will send it in an email. So I know the chat sometimes disappears for folks. So yes, do folks have questions for me?
Great, thanks, Isaiah. Any questions? All right, not seeing any. And how about updates from our friends at Pierce County Department of Emergency Management? And they probably dropped off the call. So thank you for those who were able to stay on the call and offer the updates today. And I'm going to grab that link real quick before we move on. So next up, we have advocacy updates, and there's quite a few things going on. So clearly, as Rosemary referred to, there's plenty of opportunities to get involved, make a sign, and make your voice heard in the community at protests and marches tomorrow afternoon in multiple locations, not just in Tacoma, but elsewhere across Western Washington. I did see folks sharing other locations in the chat, Gig Harbor, other places that are holding marches, peaceful marches tomorrow. Why don't I shift over? Sally, did you want to offer the updates that you were prepared to do? And then I want to talk a little bit about the homelessness update that was provided to the council
Okay.
with those two graphics.
Okay, so I have a lot of things for the city. It's really kind of too bad the city people aren't here. I get to have free reign with this. So yesterday at the Community Vitality and Safety Committee, they talked about the rental housing code and the various ways that it's either aligned or in conflict with each other. And there is an excellent handout related to that I would urge people who are interested in rental housing policy to download and take a look at. It's really useful. On this morning at the same time we are meeting, the council is meeting with their federal lobbying people to get an update on federal funding challenges. And I will contact the city clerk's office and ask them to put that video up as soon as they can, because that will be very important information for all of us to have. On Tuesday, the 17th, starting at 10 o'clock in the morning, the Government Performance and Finance Committee will be looking at the multifamily tax exemption program and how it's working. And for those of you who have heartburn about that and affordable housing, you might want to watch that meeting or watch the video of that meeting. That is a committee that John Hines chairs. So I recommend that to you. The study session at noon on the 17th will focus on the idea of a regional fire authority, which would be a change to the way that Tacoma Fire Department would operate. And the request is for the council to authorize a feasibility study to look at the idea of a regional fire authority. So if you're interested in how the fire department serves us all, that's another meeting you might want to watch, or watch the video. On the 24th at the study session, there will be a briefing from the Media and Communications Office, and they talk a lot about how they frame messages for the community. Very interesting stuff. If you are interested in how the city talks to us about their stuff, that's an interesting meeting. There is an update, a written update to how the TMC 8.19, that would be the sweeps ordinance, is going, and that's what Rob is going to talk about, but there's a document related to that. There was supposed to be a report on the city's revenue strategy because they do have a budget shortfall at this point. That has been delayed to a future date. And I think that's everything. And they do have a Juneteenth proclamation at the regular city council meeting on the 17th for those of you who are interested in that proclamation. For the county, Devin already covered the Health and Human Services Committee meeting. That will be recorded as well. So if you can't watch that in person, you can watch the video. And the county council meeting also has a Juneteenth proclamation. And lastly, the unified regional approach, the task forces continue to meet, and that process is moving along, and hopefully there will be more reports out on that soon. So that's what I've got, Rob.
Yeah, thank you, Sally. And I'll also mention after I talk a little bit about the city's homelessness report, a couple other items. But just to tie into what Sally shared, I wanted to share a couple of screen grabs that I did from the report that the Neighborhood and Community Services Department provided to city council members regarding the homelessness response on the part of the city. And one of the pieces of news that came out this week was that the city of Tacoma now understands how much funding they are going to receive from the state to help support shelters that previously were planned to close by the end of June, so in a mere few weeks. So the two slides that I grabbed out of the city manager's report related to this are this slide that shows the progression of the number of shelter spaces over time. So from November 14th of 2022 to the current state of things as of June 13th, 2025. You'll note that there's an asterisk here that denotes that the emergency shelters number that's shown here is actually reflecting the number of shelter spaces that will close in June and July. So let me move real quickly then to the next slide. Let's see if I can do that easily. I'm gonna have to stop the share, I think, and go back in. The next slide shows which shelters are going to be retained. Why is it not working for me? Which shelters are going to be retained with the funding that the city is receiving from the state. So let me very briefly show that slide. And what you'll see is that the shelters that the city plans to use $3 million in state funding to retain through at least June of 2026 include Bethlehem Baptist Shelter with 40 beds, the Tacoma Emergency Micro Shelter Site number 3 with 60 beds, and the Holy Rosary Safe Parking Program with its 40 spaces. Currently, they anticipate keeping open through June of 2026. That means that all of the other temporary and emergency shelter sites, other than the stability site, are going to be shutting down in June of this year. So what that means is a reduction of roughly 147 shelter spaces between now and over the next few weeks, ultimately. And an impact on the countywide system that sees things go from the current around 1,000 shelter spaces that are available down to about 860. So that's important information for us to know, and it's new information that was actually only written about very recently in the News Tribune and covered on King 5 a day or so ahead of that. So next up, I wanted to share something about, we are coming up on the 1-year anniversary of the Supreme Court decision related to the Grants Pass case. And the organization Housing Not Handcuffs is actually hosting an event on June 17th at 5 p.m. our time. This is the link to register to join that event, which I've already done. But what they're going to talk about during this 1-hour webinar is how we can fight for homes with dignity in the wake of the 1-year anniversary of the grants past decision. So if you have an interest, there's about 250 people who are currently signed up for this national webinar on the 17th, and please do join if you can. I know there's a lot of other things going on. And then the last thing I wanted to do is to provide a link to a story from the Seattle Times that talks about the impacts of funding cuts in the state budget related to what used to be called the right-of-way program. That is the program that's run by the Department of Commerce that originally focused on sheltering people, moving people from sites that were in state rights of way along highways in 5 counties into shelter spaces as they removed encampments. The gist of this story is just spelling out the impacts of the state budget decisions that were made by the legislature back in April that didn't completely defund the program, but will only provide enough funding to to help people remain in housing that they received as part of this program if they are already in housing. It does not allow enough funding to continue the program. So they will not be using this program or method to address encampments in those 5 counties going forward. They'll just continue to pay for the shelter and housing that was provided to folks who had previously been served with the program. So I wish I could bring more good news to these meetings, but this is another one where the impact of funding decisions means there's fewer resources in the community. So that's it for advocacy updates. Any questions from folks? All right. I think Sally already talked about the URA or Unified Regional Approach task force meetings that have been happening. I know I was unable due to a family emergency to attend the task force meeting that I should have been at this week. However, Sally's on that group. I know that the other groups also met this week, but I don't think we probably need to spend more time on that. I would like to offer some time though now for folks to share good trouble announcements or any success stories that we want to share before we wrap up today's meeting. Anybody have anything they'd like to share with the 45 of us who are still in the room? And feel free to come off mute or to raise your hand, whatever works for you.
I just want to say that Juneteenth is coming up before we meet again. And in the face of all of the madness that is coming down from the federal level about not paying any attention to the history that we all share here, or at least we share the results of the history, it's a good time to celebrate, to do something, to say that was a fine day. We can hope for more days like that, and we should not forget our history.
Thank you, Teresa. Yeah, it's a great reminder. Anyone else who'd like to bring up announcements for the group?
This is Scott Herman with the Tacoma Public Library. Just wanted to say that for the first time in months, all locations of the Tacoma Public Library are now back open to the public with heating and ventilation and air conditioning repairs still going on, but mostly completed. So that means that both the Swayze, Wheelock, and Main libraries, which have all been closed over the course of the last 2 years, are now fully back online. So send people to the library. We can help.
Thanks, Scott. That's a great reminder. And I can't help but note that the libraries are going to be even more critical as we move into hot days, potentially smoky days, and then of course into the predictable crisis of winter that will come up in a few months.
Yes, at 85 degrees and above, all Tacoma Public Libraries become cooling centers, wherein we will be distributing water, and we generally have air conditioning, which is nice. I wish we were open more hours, but that's a different issue. But that, you know, we are here to help, like I said.
Thanks, Scott. Teresa.
I have one more. I see that Mike Yoder, are you still here, Mike? I want to make an announcement that's not really something for this group, but something you can refer people to. I don't know if Mike or Rosemary could put the flyer in the chat, but I forgot to get it set up so that I could do it. On the 17th, we're doing a community conversation to invite people. It's aimed a lot at faith communities, but anyone is welcome. It's going to be at FUMCOT, and it's talking about the stuff that we talk about here. There's going to be nothing, I don't believe there will be anything that people in this group don't know, so I'm not encouraging you to come unless you want to come and help out. But if you have anyone who's kind of interested in homelessness, why are we still at the place we're at? What are these changes with funding looking like at the community level? What can people do to help? That's for them. So I don't know, did anybody find the flyer? If not, I will send it out to the whole coalition after this call. So I didn't have that queued up. I don't know why not. I mean, that's something I'm involved in and it's coming right up. So
Yeah, sending it to the list would be great.
I'll do that.
All right, everybody. So we are at 10:55. Unless anybody has one last item they would like to share, I think we can probably wrap up for today. I will remind folks that if you have an interest in helping plan upcoming meetings, we'll have a group of us staying on this Zoom call. After a 5-minute break, we'll do some planning. But for everyone else, I want to wish you a safe and happy weekend and hopefully see some of you in the community this weekend. I
Happy
also hope to
Father's
see
Day.
you come back next week. What was that, Teresa?
I said happy Father's Day to anyone who has a father or is a father or plans to be a father. Happy to all of you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.